The third gap in language learning. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. Today I'd like to talk about the third gap. What's that? Language learning is a process, and you're watching this video because you want to learn English. You want to improve your English. And learning any language, in this case English, is a journey. Along the way, you're going to notice three gaps. We all do. The first one is probably behind you. The fact that you are able to understand what I am saying tells me that you're not dealing with the first gap, because that is the beginner problem. How do you get a grip on a language if you know no words, you don't know anything about the language, and it's coming at you as noise? Nothing makes sense. But that isn't you, because that's behind you. English is a different sort of language worldwide because it is taught in so many schools around the world that most people who are watching this have had some contact with English, and it may have been in school. It may have been traditional learning methods of vocabulary and grammar. There are a lot of people around the world who want to speak English, who understand what I am saying, but they have trouble with native content because native English speakers talk too fast. And the same group has trouble with speaking because they just can't find the words. They just, they know a lot of words, but how to put them together in sentences that make sense. So what I've just described is actually the second gap. Somebody who knows a fair amount about the language. They're not a beginner. They might be called an A2. They've listened to a lot of language, they know a lot of words, but they have trouble understanding native content, and they really can't speak the language. This is my constituency. If that sounds like you, you're in the right place, because this is the group that this channel is designed for. The second gap in my scheme of terms here is the intermediate stage. And the reason I call it a gap is because it's very big and you have to get across it. It's a gap. It's between super beginner and advanced, and it just seems like forever. People have described that they were on a plateau. They just couldn't see any progress, or they just came up against a barrier. They couldn't make any progress. They felt like there was something blocking them. This is that intermediate stage, and we have to get beyond it. Now, Stephen Krashen, Marvin Brown, Pablo Roman, and a bunch of others have told us that the solution to the intermediate stage gap that we run into is a boatload of input, comprehensible input, good quality input. So now we come to the topic, which is the third gap. The third gap is the conversion to output. You've been listening for 1,500 hours, 2,000 hours. People online will complain that the comprehensible input is passive. It's all passive, and as if there was something fundamentally evil about passive activities. Admittedly, listening is passive, but it's part of life. So as we look at the task of converting from input to output, if you look at the literature and the information about comprehensible input, it doesn't have much on this topic. There's not much there. because comprehensible input is focused on input. Really, comprehensible input, most of the effort and most of the available literature on that subject deals with the intermediate stage of language learning, that middle gap. So how do you convert to output? Well, what do? You just immerse yourself, stress yourself out? No, maybe not. Maybe there's a better way to do this than immerse yourself and stress yourself out. That's where some people go with this. They just go to another country and just start talking to people. I think there's a better way. I'll tell you my approach. It's based on ideas I got from other people. This is what I'm doing. My goal is to convert to output without piling on a lot of stress. I want to have that same gentle approach that I found with comprehensible input, but I want to convert to speaking. So what are the things you need to do to speak? Well, first of all, you have to start pronouncing words. If you have enough input, pronouncing the words will not be difficult because the sounds are in your brain, but you actually have to make the sounds come out of you. And pronouncing words silently to yourself is not the same. So if you're reading something to yourself, good for you. You're getting a lot of vocabulary, you're getting a lot of information, you're getting a lot of benefit, it's input. Call it what it is, it's input. Now, if you read the same passage aloud, you've added partial output. You've added the pronunciation phase of the output. And this is my step one to overcome the third gap. Step one, read aloud. At this point, let me give you a heads up on a tool you may find super useful. There's an app that I use, and it is called Link, or Linku, Lingq. You'll find it easily online. And Link is an app for your device. I have it on a cell phone. I have it on an iPad. Link is very interesting. It is the creation of Steve Kaufman, a Canadian in Vancouver. And Steve is a polyglot, an enthusiast, and a very bright fellow. And so his platform, Link, is super useful for language learners for input. I use it for two things. I use Link for podcasts, and I use Link for this reading aloud, because if you bring up one of the transcripts, you can put it into sentence mode and you can play it if you want, or you can just read the sentence. You can read the sentence and then play the sentence and compare what you hear to what you said. So this is a more sophisticated, more user-friendly shadowing methodology. So you might want to look at Link. His app is not expensive. He teaches a variety of language. It's not just for English. So I like Link, I use it, and that reading aloud was very beneficial to getting the words out, to starting the output process. Next is talking to myself. Sounds funny, right? People might be criticized. Yeah, he's talking to himself. What is he talking? He's talking to himself. It's funny. No, I do it all the time. Walk and talk, drive and talk. So if I'm in my car and I'm not listening to input, I'm probably speaking Spanish to myself, saying the words out loud, making sentences. I'm describing things I see, things I'm going to do, things I did, things I like, things I don't like. I am expressing all this to no one. Just speaking as I'm driving. The other thing I do all the time is walk and talk. If I take a walk in the neighborhood or a walk in the woods, I'm going to be talking to myself out loud in Spanish the whole way. What do I see? What color is it? How big is it? Do I like it? Does it remind me of something? What am I going to do tomorrow? What did I do yesterday? All these things are coming out. Now, talking to oneself the first day in the target language, super difficult. Super difficult. I didn't like it. I found it dreadful, but that went away. Now I do it all the time, and it works. It satisfies something that I learned from Pablo Roman, and that is you really don't want people to correct your grammar. That really is not very helpful. You don't learn if somebody's constantly correcting your grammar. That is not a great way to learn language. So it's ideal. If you're talking to yourself, nobody's going to correct your language. Actually, that's not true because you will. If you say something and it doesn't sound right to you because you had enough input that it just doesn't sound right, you'll actually correct yourself. Gradually, what you say when you're doing this self-talk drill will get better and better and better. The third phase is talking to other people. A couple of options. You could get a native speaker boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, form a couple with a native speaker that would give you unlimited access to conversation. But a lot of us, that's impractical because we're already in a couple. So I don't advise you to do that. A lot of people will say that offhand, not that it's advice, but that was the key to their success because they wound up as a part of a couple where their partner is a native speaker. That almost ensures your success. But short of doing that, Tandem, the language exchange, is a great way to do that. You find somebody who will be your language partner. You can have more than one. You talk in your native language to them. They talk to you in their native language. So you're both getting input. That's the general scheme for Tandem, but you can vary it. For instance, you could say, let's talk in Spanish for 15 minutes and in English for 15 minutes. Now, in order for that to work, your language learning partner on Tandem would have to be at a similar level and ready to start output. That shouldn't be difficult. The other way you can do it is to do a reverse language exchange where you're both speaking your target language to the other, and I would recommend you set the ground rules to try to not correct each other. So those 3 steps are my methodology for addressing the fundamental problem of going from input to output. Start with making the sounds, reading out loud, and then shadowing, perhaps using the Link app. Follow that up with a lot of self-talk. And then third, consider using a language exchange such as Tandem. If you have enough input, think in terms of 200 or 300 hours of these activities. That isn't a guarantee that if you do 287 hours, you will be fluent and perfect. No, it's just the mental image I use to understand how much time I need to put into this. And then when I put in that much time, I get to reevaluate and find out how much additional time is needed. Now, when I'm in this phase of output, I'm still getting input every day. That's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite comments below and hope to see you in future videos. See you soon.